Hi everyone, welcome to the 71st episode of the Zicast. As always, I'm your host Ryan Ziax, and today I'm joined by Media Enthusiast Ben Darling.
Hello there, how you doing, Ryan Ziax?
I'm awesome, and I'd like to shout out Alex Bean, the great Alex Bean, for stepping in the technical
The greatest Alex Bean, in fact.
Exactly. And
Say
I know,
that again?
Ben, you've been wanting to get on the show for a
bit,
while.
yeah,
and
just a tiny bit.
It's finally happening.
It happened.
And so you know what we do here, so we could kick this off. How about you tell us a bit about yourself?
So hi, I'm Ben Darling, as you know. I come to Quinnipiac for film. I'm in a 4+0. Everyone's just like, oh, 3+1, 3+1. I'm in the 4+0. I'm different. And I write, I produce, and I act. And I do a lot of stuff with. I love consuming media. Typically, I call it nerd culture. So like Star Wars, Invincible, Avatar, Doctor Who, stuff like that. Are all stuff that I've been very drawn to, and I'm a huge gamer as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And where are you from?
I'm from Southington, Connecticut.
Really?
Which is just, it's about like, if you put like Connecticut like on a map, it's like right dead in the center, pretty much. It's a nice, it's like we have enough people to be considered like a city, but we don't want to, so we're just like, no, we're gonna keep it as a town.
Yeah, interesting. Like, I'm from North Haven, as you probably know.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were from Southington. I realized we're both Connecticuters.
Connecticuters. Yeah, no, I didn't realize that about you either. That's interesting. I thought you were from I think it was from New York or something like that. I must have heard the North, and I was just like,
yeah.
New York.
North.
Yeah, somewhere north. It's like a boot. It's Canadian or something like that. I don't know.
Of course, Quinnipiac is in Hamden, Connecticut, for those who don't know.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, we could get into things about you. So how about you tell us what led you to wanting to study film?
So it was actually, the more I think about it in like the hindsight of things, film's something I've wanted to do ever since I was probably like a child, like back when I used to play Legos in my grandmother's attic. It was like something I always wanted to do, but I never really like honed it in as a skill that I wanted to do until I was looking for colleges, and I decided to look towards I was originally going to be a comp sci major. I took AP computer science in high school, absolutely hated it. I did like visual design and stuff like that, and it was fun. What was it, visual design, Visual Studio or something like that, the Microsoft coding engine instead of JavaScript. And so when I went to JavaScript, which is an entirely different language to talk to the computer about how to program it, I hated that because I didn't get to see my work as I was like doing it, which like Visual Studio lets you do it a little bit more. I think it's Visual Studio. It's been a while since I've done that stuff, but I was originally going to do that, and then my parents gave me they met a college advisor who specialized in finding out what people wanted to do, and so I was talking about my interests and stuff like that, and she's just like, why don't you want to do film? And I was just like, that makes so much more sense, because originally I was going to get into comp sci, do games and stuff like that, and I wanted to work like on games such as like Skyrim, Fallout, stuff like that. And I really wanted to get into games as that kind of storytelling medium. I never really realistically was just like, oh, film, until she told me. And then so I heard about Quinnipiac. Originally, I love telling this story, especially when I was a tour guide at Quinnipiac. Originally, Quinnipiac was like last on my list of colleges. I was like, I don't want to go. And the only reason why is because, and like I know that like all the executives and stuff like that at the school are sweating right now. They're just like, oh, why do you say it was last? The only reason why I said it was last was because I live so close. And I remember stories of my dad telling me that he went to Central Connecticut State University, which is just is it New I can't remember where exactly it is, but he lived close enough to the college that he commuted, and he always talked about how he regretted not living on campus. So I was just like, I want to go to a college that I'm far enough away from my parents that I can be my own person, but then I'm close enough that, like, you know, God forbid something were to happen, it's easy enough to you know, pick up the slack and like help out. When they told me I could live on campus, Quinnipiac immediately shot to the top of my list because of like programs like QUNLA, where Quinnipiac goes to LA, and also the Capstone initiative, where they have students come in and they do all their senior projects. I was talking with David Atkins, one of the advisors, and no college does the capstones kind of like we do in undergrad. A lot of schools do it the same way for graduates, but undergrad, it's Quinnipiac is realistically like one of the best programs in the country. So I was really honed in on that. I was offered to be in the 3+1. I said no thank you. I wanted to like normal college experience, because realistically, what I went into college, I was just like, I can learn this stuff a lot on YouTube, essentially. Like I can learn this on my own time, figure it out. I taught myself how to edit. I taught myself a lot of the stuff that I do with writing and stuff like that. I kind of had to teach myself how to produce, which was like a thing we can get more into when we talk about Capstone stuff. But I really came here for like the connections and also just the experience of going to college and being out on my own. So yeah.
Even with a lot of the awesome like film courses and clubs in the regard of film that we have, is like sometimes you kind of just have to teach yourself how to do it.
Exactly.
And of course, like I'm kind of local too, so I feel very much like what you feel, like wanting to be close to home but far enough away
that you can develop your own sort of sense of identity. And that was something I at the beginning of my freshman year, I kind of struggled with a little bit, because I was just like, I really like just whatever group I'm with. I was a huge, like, not in terms of like damaging, but like in terms of like it wasn't fair to myself, code switching, which is basically like being like, oh, I'm with this group of people, I'm gonna act this way. Oh, I'm with a different group of people, time to act a different way. So I definitely I struggled with that my freshman year, and as I went through, I definitely think now 4 years later, I still have a long way to go on my journey to help discover my identity, but I would say that I am a lot more sure of myself and like who I am now, and more able to stand up for myself rather than like let people run me over.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's just like it's human nature to sometimes code switch in that way. Do you have any like scenarios where you felt like not yourself, so to speak?
I would say 1,000% with my roommates my freshman year. My freshman year roommates, they were okay guys. There are some stories I'm gonna leave out because like imagine they watch it and they're just like, hey man, what the heck. They still have me on Snapchat and everything like that, so I'm just gonna be light with this. But I definitely say that we'd have like parties in our dorm, and like I would act a lot more like not myself in a way to kind of like we played at one point, a bunch of people came in and we were playing like skate and stuff like that. And they're just like, oh, Ben, have you played this game? I was just like, oh, yeah, I've played it a ton of times. I never picked that game up in my life. And it was a lot more like some of my mannerisms. Like I had never heard before that year the phrase, this is so revealing of my personality and how sheltered I was, but I had never heard of the phrase "it's not that deep" until my freshman roommates, and I started adopting their mannerisms and how like they talked until like basically I was just like not talking like myself sometimes. And I would say that sometimes it was a lot more of like a defense mechanism, I would say, because like I'm in a group that I want people to like accept me, and I kind of wanted to just like roll with that and like be like, hi, I'm here, please don't like reject me or anything like that. But I definitely like got better at like being comfortable with it's, again, like I said, it's still like very much a work in progress, but it was my freshman year, a lot of it was a defense mechanism, like I said.
And I know you mentioned your capstone, so if you don't mind telling us a bit about that, because you were kind of filming like a sitcom, which is different, because I had Arman on here as well, Arman Rojlani, who's directing the project. So if you don't mind, like, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm the producer on the Paradise sitcom pilot. Arman and I, he called me over the summer while he was in LA with you. And he called me and he was just like, I want to do a sitcom. And I was on the phone with him and I was just like, there's what? We the pilot thing, they do that as a writing thing. You said you didn't want to do that. He said, no. I want to film a pilot. And I was like, you want to film a pilot? You want to do that? And like after we talked about it for a little bit, and I was like, okay, it's definitely doable because if you think about it, most of the capstones are about 18-ish minutes. Those on the longer side, and sitcoms are a lot more dialogue heavy. So we ran it by we started writing it. We would be on the phone sometimes over the summer. I was here as a summer RA. So I basically like, we're just making sure the campus doesn't blow up. There's nothing really happening and there's not a lot of students here, but we're just kind of there as an additional support for any students that are here. But we'd spend one of the dorms, Hill, I would spend my lunch breaks in there and I would just be cooking lunch while I was on the phone with Armand, and he would be writing and we'd be bouncing ideas off of each other. And then we kind of like from, I want to say like beginning of our junior year, kind of figured that we wanted to be a producer director duo. And we kind of like ran with that as we went into choosing our teams for Capstone. So came in to produce it. It was definitely challenging because as I said, again, I'm 4+0. A lot of the grad classes that like most producers that were my colleagues were saying like, oh, did you do that thing in that producer class? And I was like, no. So it was a little rough from the get-go to like kind of pick up the slack and like figure it out. But I would say that one of my best traits is being able to think on my feet, and be able to kind of pick up where others like, not where others may have lacked. I still can do that, but like it was more of a fact of like, hey, if I drop the ball on something, I was very much able to like get back up and pick that up. So we definitely had a struggle with the money was the biggest thing, because it's like, how do you go up to somebody and be like, hey, you want to give me like a bunch of money? There was a story that I heard, like one of the capstones, like their one of their parents donated like $6,000, and I was like, there's no way if my parents did that, I'd be like, yo, so could we like pay off my tuition or something like that? The money was the hardest bit. Once we got through that, it was all good downhill from there. Because that's the part where we really got to be creative. I think one of the greatest opportunities we got to like test to see how things were going was the table reads that we did, because we got to see what jokes landed and what jokes didn't, so we were able to like rewrite accordingly, and I think the final project was definitely something good. And we also had a fantastic cast. We had Mark Thomas, who plays Alex, who's Harsh's best friend. He had to stay a night earlier, so I paid for an additional night for him to stay in the hotel that we were shooting in. And I didn't explain the premise of Paradise. You want me to go through that real quick?
Yeah, if you don't mind for us.
I'll go through that real quick. It's basically just about this guy named Harsh. He's like the son of Raj Patel, who is a big hotel conglomerate owner, CEO, and he has a lot of money, and Harsh tends to spend that money. We've all seen that, like the spoiled rich kid who just kind of like he's a playboy. He wants to get drunk every night. He wants to drive all the cars, like all that stuff, and so he's typical rich boy. He embarrasses his father, and then his father's just like, all right, that's it, you're gonna go to this hotel where I started working at, and you're gonna learn some responsibility. And he gets into all sorts of shenanigans, and to learn more, you'll just have to watch the pilot. But yeah, that's the basic premise of it. We have 3 main characters. We have Harsh, Jasmine, and Alex. Jasmine is the actual manager of the hotel that Harsh meets when he walks through the door, and then Alex is Harsh's best friend. So the guy that played Alex, Mark Thomas,
yeah,
he came to me on the first night, so I said, I'm gonna meet you at the hotel and we'll check you in because I have to pay for the room. So we get to the door, I walk him in, we're just like, hey, how you going? We're doing like the typical like small talk sort of thing, and he's like, man, this is my first film that I'm ever doing, and I'm just like, that's really cool. Like, I'm so glad that like we could be like one of the first things that you did as like an actor, and I'm like, I'm super excited to be able to get to work with you and to get to know you. And he was just like, yeah, and I'm doing this feature as well. And I'm just like, oh God, like we're gonna get blown out of the water by this. And this stuck with me. He looked me dead in the eyes and he said, you guys are more put together than the feature. And I was like, there's no way, because we are just a bunch of idiots just figuring this out as we go. And that's what I like about it, is that we did a lot of planning. That was the one thing in Capstone, you do a test drive towards the beginning of the year to basically like you film something with your group to kind of like understand how your dynamic works, understand what your roles are, kind of solidify all that. And what ended up happening was we learned that we're really good thinking on our feet, but we didn't plan anything. So we decided to go super hard in pre-production, plan almost everything that we could. The areas that we could kind of leave to chance, we'd be like, okay, let's plan the contingencies out beforehand and let's budget for more room regardless. So we always gave ourselves some breathing room so we could do what we do best, which is if something went wrong, we were able to think on our feet. We originally budgeted 5 days for filming. We had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then technically Monday. We had it completely open as like a reshoot day, but that's really if everything hit the fan. So we ended up filming in 3 days. So that was a phenomenal experience, I would say, because we did have those hiccups. We had a lot of times that the hotel, one of our first hiccups was they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, you can't bring in outside food. And I'm just like, oh word, what are we supposed to do? So they're just like, okay, well, can we like work something out with it? Because we had our production designer Tyler Salta. Production designer just handles with everything you see on the screen, like all the set dressings, all the props, all the costumes. That's all Tyler. And he offered a solution to our location problem, because we were hitting up hotels left and right being like, hey, you want to do this? Hey, do you want to do this? Hey, do you want to do this? I hated doing cold open phone calls. That scared me so much, because like I pick up the phone and like some guy would pop on and be like, hello, who's this? And I'm just like, hey, you want to film something? And they're just like, no. So it was a little bit of a daunting experience. But then he's just like, oh, my friend's mom is like a realtor, and I'll give you like her contact information and like we can work something out. And so I contacted her. Name's Monica. She's the best person I've ever met. She that's quite a lofty title I just gave her. She's one of the best people I ever met. She's still like, she's the GOAT. She helped us in so many ways. She helped us with the location, and then so she hears about our problem with the outside food, and she like, she's that, you know, that meme going around of like the girl standing in front of the knight being like, he said no pickles. Like, she's that type of person. So we got told we can't bring in outside food, and she's like, yo, that's not cool. So she goes to the owner and it's just like, look, can we work something out? And she said, what's their budget for food? We can possibly do something with Adam's Ribs. So she asked for my budget for food, and I think I had originally adjusted the budget to be about $500 for food. Not 500, a little over $750 for food. So we ended up lowering that to $500 to feed the cast and crew, which was about 15 people a day for 4 days. We budgeted for only $500 with the hotel's restaurant that was built in, Adam's Ribs. And I was like, holy crap. And we sat down for the first day of lunch, and I'm just like, all right, this is gonna be like something quick, something easy. Like, I'm not expecting too much. They set at our tables chicken, penne alla vodka, and potatoes with lemonade, water, and Coke. And I'm like, damn, that's that producer that worked that out. But I couldn't have done it without Monica. It definitely like it made me realize that like, hey, you can negotiate people down. It's just about like, again, having that backbone that I was talking about towards the beginning, which is like, again, something I'm developing, something I'm learning, and as a person. And I thought I had a backbone and a tough skin when I was in freshman year. I learned that I didn't know nothing. So then when I was here now my senior year, I've definitely been able to like, you know, hone those skills. But yeah, no, Capstone was fantastic. We came in under we had one guy told us, he's just like, yeah, there's no way you're gonna film 22 pages in 4 days, and like we're sitting there being like, all right, well, we'll do it. And then we did it, and we did it in 3. We originally had scenes planned for Sunday, and then we didn't have to film anything. We just did ADR and narration the next day. So all of us got to sleep in our own beds after a couple nights. So that was pretty good.
Yeah. Now I'm hungry.
Yeah, no, for real. I did not eat before this, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I could really use some penne alla vodka.
I could go back in time.
No, if I could go back in time, just give me that plate back, please, Adam's Ribs.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about like feeling like you having a backbone until you approach a situation like that. Yeah, I always feel that work should always humanize you in that way, and that if you're not growing in that way and changing, then why are you doing it in the first place?
And that's why you come to college. It's not, again, school, in my mind, it's changed in a different way. Like, I think people learn a lot on their own. Some people learn better with like people instructing them and stuff like that. But for film in particular, you come to college to learn and to get experience. And like, I'm gonna rip this straight from the Clone Wars. I've lived by this since I was a little kid. Experience outranks everything. And once you learn that, I think that there's nothing in life that you won't want to try. I was originally going back to my grandmother, and I was telling her about all this stuff I'm doing, and she's like, yo, like, how are you able to do this? And I said, I just tried. Like, I saw something, I wanted to try it, and if I had the capability to do it, I'm gonna try it. Somebody asked me, Armand actually, he was telling me about this film that's gonna, he said, oh, it's in London. Just like, that's far, dude, but if I can try it, this is when the time to try it and to do that. And it's also gonna establish myself and put myself out there on the board. So I was like, yeah, no, if we can get that worked out, like I can, and also it's paid, so that's a big thing. But yeah, no, I definitely think that people, when I was in high school and stuff like that, like, again, like I had like a backbone. I was in a current events class during the COVID-19 pandemic. That was that was a current event in and of itself. And I had, oh my gosh, I had people in that class that would just like come at me for any time like I shared my opinion. I was just like, yo, I'm right though, like in some case, because like in my mind, I'm not picking sides. I'm just like, hey, this is what I think is right. Typically what I think is right leans left a little bit more, but like there are some, like, I'm not going to get into that political conversation because I don't want to. But yeah, no, I just like, I thought the point of that sidestep was to say that like, oh, I think I could handle people that could come at me. And then I worked in Res Life on the phones. Now in Res Life on the phones, they just have us working there. It's a work study thing where you get an award through the school's financial aid, and they say, okay, you can work like for like $2,000 or something like that. And so I worked in Res Life for my work study, and some of these people on the phones, man, they like to come at you. I never learned quicker that we have like parents that are really entitled at this school. And I learned that the hard way through the phones, and it was a lot of fun. On some days, like, again, some days like I was able to like slam dunk. Like, we had this one kid come in and be like, oh, but I don't have to sign the housing contract, right? And I was just like, no, you have to. And like, I was like, kind of like, every single time he tried to dodge around a question, I was just like, no, you can't dodge around that. And I had an RHD come up to me afterwards and be like, good job, Ben. And I was like, yay. So it was, again, you learn through experience, and that's the best learning in my mind.
Producing your capstone gave you producing experience, but you already had a producing experience from Quinnipiac Tonight.
I did,
our sketch comedy show on campus. So if you don't mind taking us through your journey with Quinnipiac Tonight and just kind of what led you there and what you enjoy about it.
Of course, yeah. So Quinnipiac Tonight is, a lot of people, I don't like this comparison. They say like, oh, it's like the campus's SNL, and it's just like, okay, well, that's like kind of diminishing like what we can do with the show. Is like SNL is its own entity. They have their own bits on there. They have their weekend update. They have their sketches and stuff like that. The formula is similar to Quinnipiac Tonight, but it's not the same show. So I don't like it when people are just like, oh yeah, it's the campus SNL. That's not correct. So I really like it, just like saying, hey, it's sketch comedy. We come on. We have pre-recorded stuff. We have live stuff. Sometimes we do improv. Sometimes the improv lands. Sometimes it doesn't. That's the beast with improv. It's just like sometimes the jokes really land and people understand it, but sometimes not quite. And it's all dependent on like the actors within the action. It's just like, are they setting up the scene properly? Complete side tangent. I'm so sorry. I have ADHD, so we're going to be doing this a lot. But side tangent, we were doing cast run-throughs last night for one of our shows, and we do this thing called picture improv, which is basically like you get shown a picture by the head writers, and then you have to like create a premise based off of that. Jeff Fish, who's one of our head writers, he shows me a ball, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with that? And so like we started doing a dodgeball bit, and like we're just like, I'm just like, where do I go? It's just a ball. Yeah. It's just a ball. Like I know like you have to create like a presence and like a thing off that. And I said to him afterwards, I was just like, hey, no hate, because I did kind of ish crash out, but like it was no hate, because like realistically I could have figured out something that went into it, but it's just like it's more like they're just kind of like, hey, here's the picture, go, and it's just like, can I think for a second? Can I know it's improv, but like can somebody like come up with an idea? And sometimes in the environment of that show, it's kind of like they just take you along for the ride, and there's like no going back. And then when their idea fizzles out, they just kind of stop instead of like trying to figure out new ways to continue the bit. That's what I think like a lot of people have problem with improv, is that like once the bit is dead, they don't know how to keep going. They just kind of like stand there like, what do I do? But yeah, no. So I started that show like literally freshman year. I think like a week out of the gate. I remember I made my new friends, my so and so freshman college group, which like I think we all have the experience where like we had a certain group we hung out with our freshman year that we haven't talked to in years now. But my friend Caitlin, I remember I got the quote unquote gig to be on cast, and she was just like really excited, and like I was really excited, and then like I never talked to Caitlin after that. But I got into cast. Went to the first meeting, went to all that. They thought I was super funny, which like at the time I definitely think that I was like a funny guy, but I definitely had to like hone my skills. Like I definitely think comedy is timing, and comedy is also like how you deliver things. Like you can have like the best worded joke, but it's like it's said too fast or it's delivered wrong, and like it falls flat. Same goes for like there are such things as like very poorly written jokes. And sometimes like you try to make that delivery the best you can, and it's sometimes really difficult. So I joined cast. I made friends quickly with all like the producers and like the APs, the EPs, associate producers, and executive producers respectively. Our EPs are the ones who are completely in charge of the show. They do all the setup, well, not all the setup, but like the background stuff that most people don't understand is there. The EPs will deal with. A lot of the organization, a lot of the communication, and also setting up a lot of the norms for the next year that come through. I think that's something EPs forget a lot, like from what I've seen in the past, is like they kind of be like, once this is over, it's over. It's not that big a deal. We'll get into it a little bit, but my journey as EP, I tried to like change that formula up a little bit. So I was in cast, did great my first semester. I got a lot of laughs, stuff like that. Then second semester, Armon joins in on cast, and so like he and I are kind of like sometimes like a little bit of a, like we had in our intro, we had like a little bit of a dynamic duo setup sort of thing. So we kind of went from that, and that was really fun. So after he joins, we start asking the question, who's going to be the next EP? Because there's already like there's like people talking about, oh, like there's problems. And at that time in Quinnipiac Tonight, there was a lot of friction between Quinnipiac Tonight and Cabinet, which Cabinet is like the head of the club that governs in quotations Q30. And there was a lot of like friction, and I wouldn't say that it was one-sided. I definitely think that there was friction, and people on either side weren't really willing to kind of bridge that gap. So a lot of the questions behind like what are we gonna do sort of was just like, who's gonna be the next EP? And originally there was a person, Fiona Stevens, she was like, me and Armand were just like, yo, you should do that. And she's just like, yeah, maybe. And then one day I wake up and she's the production manager. And I'm just like, whoa, holy crap. So she gets production manager, and then I remember this day so vividly because this is back when I started working in admissions. This is back when I was like a Quinnipiac like total sellout. I was like, everything I wore was Quinnipiac oriented. It was a fun time. Yellow does not go good with a lot of things. Just to burst your bubble. But yeah, no, I worked in admissions, and we were at Admitted Students Day, and Fiona Armand come up to me, and they're just like, Ben, you should be the next EP. And I was like, there's no way that I should do that, because what the heck, because like I'm just on cast. I don't know what I'm doing. And it proved the next year that I still didn't know what I was doing, but I was just like, I told them, I was just like, there's no way in heck that I know what I'm doing. And so we thought about it. I thought about it for a couple of days, and then Student Media Showdown, I wasn't in the crew, but like I just kind of pulled up to like be like quote unquote like one of the celebrities that pulled up. It wasn't a celebrity thing. We weren't celebrities. We're college kids. But like they interviewed us on the carpet and stuff like that to like make it look like it was like a full like an award show and stuff like that. And they knew I was from Quinnipiac Tonight, so they asked me a bunch of questions there. But I was there, and like I was thinking as I was watching the show, I was just like, yeah, I could do it. I could do it. Why not? Let's just like in terms of like screw it, we ball type of deal. So like I pulled Fiona aside like at the end of the show, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, I'll do it. So I interviewed, thought it went well, got the job, and I was like, holy crap, like who's gonna be with me? And then I got Casey McNichol with me, and I was just like, yes, let's go. This is good. I know Casey, she's really good at the technical side of stuff, so that means like I could do with the actor side of stuff. So I thought it was gonna be like a match made in heaven. It still technically was a match made in heaven. We did have some like friction again along the way, but like all EPs definitely do have friction. So I get into EP. I am one of the youngest producers in Q30, and I'm also the one that jumped from cast to EP in Quinnipiac Tonight, and that was done once before by a person before me. I can't remember what her name was, but she's still in the Discord somewhere. I cannot remember the life of her the name of her for the life of me. But so it was realistically like, it was like, holy cow, I did this, like that's an achievement type deal. But it definitely like my lack of experience showed when we came to the first show. Didn't necessarily know I was doing. Setup was definitely a little rough, and then we had some issues with like with cast, and I was like, holy crap, I was getting so overwhelmed. It was kind of a train wreck, but at the same time, because we had that sort of, the one really good thing is that the relationship with Cabinet got somewhat repaired when we went into the show with new EPs. So Cabinet was there. They gave us a huge amount of help in setting up and everything like that. But realistically, like with cast and stuff like that, that went to it was me, Kate, and Grace that really took the reins on cast, and definitely Kate and Grace took a head on that later in the semester, while I tried to like get my head wrapped around producing and stuff like that, like getting all that production nonsense out of the way. So a lot of the time was spent like kind of catching up with what was happening in the first semester, but I definitely think that like in the circumstances of like what was happening with me at the time, and what was, because I was also, this was my first year as a residential assistant, an RA, which is basically like someone told me they're like the college Discord moderators. I'm just like, it's not quite like that. It is kind of like that, but they that was my first year as an RA as well. The hours back then were insane. It was crazy. I know you had Brian on here, Brian Stefanski. He was on my staff my first year, and oh my gosh, I'm sure he can attest to us. The hours and like the stuff we were like mandated to do was kind of crazy looking back on it. When I was doing it in the moment, I was more just like, oh, this is just the job. This is just what happened. But like in hindsight, it was a crazy amount of responsibilities they gave us, and a crazy amount of times as well that we did, because nowadays we start duty. I'm getting so sidetracked from EP. I promise I'll be done after this. But we started duty now today at like 8, and then go to around midnight on weekdays, 2 a.m. on weekends. Back when I was first an RA, weekends, it always started at 6:30 for weekday duties, and then 7 for weekend duties. So we definitely had a little bit more with hours. Move-in was a lot more intense because we had 2 shifts per RA. We also had a lot less RAs then, and the work load was a little bit more because we were directing traffic and stuff like that, which, to be honest, I think the most fun I ever had with move-in was my first year as an RA, because like that's when like it literally felt like I was a part of a team, and we were working and we were doing things. I can tell 1,000 stories with that. But anyways, back to executive producing. Given the circumstances of all the stuff that I had going on in my life at that time, especially with like my aunt and stuff like that, who had a sickness at that point, I definitely think that I handled the best I could. Now, was the best I could like the most ideal? No, absolutely not. But I can sleep at night knowing that like I put my best foot forward, and it definitely, like, we picked it up second semester, and we had a lot more people join, some people that went to Sundance, which is like a film festival out in Utah, Park City, Utah, but we had a bunch of people come in, and we had new APs come in as well, because we had some people in our APs go to QUNLA at the time, and it was really like, it was a cool thing to see the show kind of coming to fruition. And like this second semester, I think, was like the true, like, this is the legacy that I left behind. That first semester, not a lot of people, there are some people who still like hold that and like say like, oh yeah, by the way, remember when that first semester went so bad? But realistically, in my mind, the second semester is what defined like how I did as an EP on that show. And the second semester, we tried new things. We tried new hosts. We got the Student Artists League to host. This is a brand new club. And originally, like, there was a set certain time that like people were supposed to be hosting. I think we wanted to get other clubs, like, instead of like SPB, because normally SPB always hosts our like Christmas episode. But we're just like, let's try someone else, because we can switch it around. We're in charge of the show. Let's switch it around. We introduced the audience cam, which is originally was never used. That fourth camera just sat in the media suite waiting for what was then at the time called Hot Goss, which is that was the other thing that we were testing with like new segments that we can do instead of what was called Hot Goss at the time, which was our version of Weekend Update that SNL does. So we went through several phases of like, we started doing like Run It Back and stuff like that. But then like one point, I think we had a meeting with the entertainment director, Isabella Foley, and Fiona, the production manager, and then my co-EP, Casey. We all sat down at one point with all of our APs and we're like, let's do away with Run It Back, because we do not need to be like that. So that's when we kind of like were trying to figure out what our identity was in that show at that point. Just trying to figure out like what was going on with what we were going to use for that segment. So eventually we got to the point where we're just like, okay, let's do Gossip with Grace. And then Gossip with Grace got put in, and like she has made it like a full-time thing, and I'm super proud of her. I see things on TikTok and I'm just like, oh, Grace, that's so cool. So yeah, and then now it's the Jeff and Madison show. So there's like a lot of things in the show like nowadays that I see, and I'm just like, I can see the legacy that I left behind on that. And again, what I was talking about with the beginning is that like some EPs just kind of like finish and then just like are that's it. Like we'll have a meeting with them over the summer, but we'll never like talk to them afterwards like that, or like we'll come in and like not really like do anything else. So I was super keen on like when Aaron and Kate took over as EPs, I gave them a whole sheet which was like as much of an in-depth explanation as I could on every single thing that we have to do as EPs. Because I was like, okay, I want, like, this was never given to me when I was there. They gave us like a sheet, but it was like kind of outdated, because I think it was from like the EPs that came like before us, and they didn't really change anything. But like at that point, the show had changed and evolved, so we needed to find new ways to tackle things. So I definitely use like some of the outdated, like, here's how you do NPS, which is like the teleprompter system. Here's how you do, and also the scheduling thing as well. Scheduling timing thing as well. Here's how you do audio. Here's how you do like reaching out to hosts, stuff like that. And I put that all into a doc, sent it over to Casey, and said, add anything you think that you need to add. And she added a bunch of technical stuff, because then she became the head engineer. And I sent it to Kate, Aaron. We had a meeting with them. They took off running, and then Casey like kind of stayed with them throughout their like whole sort of tenure. So like again, like I still see my legacy there, and I see what Kate and Aaron took that we created, and we kind of see like how they took it a step further. And then again, like it's being even taken to a step further nowadays. So I think that we're definitely in like a very good direction at this moment in time. But yeah, no. Now I'm back on cast. Yeah. I like it because I can just kind of vibe there. If there's ever an issue, I'm just like, I could deal with that, and sometimes I do. Like we had an issue with the lights at one point, but like other times, like there's like an issue, and I'm just like, yeah, cool. I don't have to deal with that anymore. I'm on cast. So it's definitely like a nice like. Nice, easy. It's a little, I will say that it's a little jarring because like I feel kind of like a fish out of water in there in cast, because like I'm one of the oldest cast there. I think the only person who's as old as me in the show right now is Ryan Agnello and Poppins, who pops in every once in a while. And I'm like, okay, so with cast, like my humor sometimes is like a little different from theirs. And like again, like it feels kind of like we're in different sort of like, I don't want to say like we're in different classes 1000% in terms of like they're sophomores, freshmen, and juniors. I'm a senior, but it's a certain point like it kind of feels like my sort of thing is different from theirs, and it's a little bit of a jarring experience to get through sometimes. But again, like I just kind of like put my best foot forward, be as funny as I can, and that's all I can do.
Yeah, you chronicled Quinnipiac Tonight very well, because of course
I tried. Yeah,
Casey was my first technical director on here, and we talked about Quinnipiac Tonight on the Zicast like a million different times. And of course, what like a lot of what you were talking about when you were EP executive producer was before my time, before I transferred to Quinnipiac. So it was cool to like hear all of that, and then kind of see how everything like the breadcrumbs of the things like that I've always known, to see like how you and Casey helped kind of put it all in place.
During that second semester, a lot of that stuff was just developmental. Like we didn't have any clue like that was going to be taken in the direction that it was. So we're like, I can't speak for Casey, but like I'm super proud of it. Like seeing it now, I'm just like, holy cow, like it's now like a thing. And people are like, things that like we were talking about when we were EPs being like, oh yeah, like this is tradition, tradition. Somebody's gonna come along and they're gonna be like, hey, that's cool, here's how we can build on that. And I think that's super powerful. I had a residence hall director, my first basically like our supervisors for RAs. He pulled me over one day and it was just like, it was one of our one-on-ones where the supervisor like checks in on us, and it was Roland at the time, and he's just like, what do you want your legacy to be? And I said, I just want to like, you know, kind of like be remembered as somebody who left like a really good mark on this school, and like kind of like can be considered like somebody who could be like remembered as like a good presence sort of, and also kind of like do things in a way that I don't know realistically what my answer was, but I think it was like mostly to like kind of be like remembered as like a good force. And oh my gosh, there was another admitted students day last year. Some mom came up to me and was just like, oh, do you know where the thing is, the event? And I was just like, no, who are you? And I didn't say who are you in real time, but like she was just like, oh, of course I know, you're Ben Darling, you're the whole reason my kid's coming to this school. And I'm just like, excuse me. And I think that was because when I did tours with admissions, I generally tried to be like as personal as possible, especially to the film people. They're coming being like, hey, this is a really cool school to come to for film. Do it. Because like a lot of the stuff they provide you with, I love that they give you all these guidelines, all this stuff like that, and like it's realistically your journey that you help create. So like when I was talking with like all the different stuff that I do, like editing, producing, writing, show running, all that stuff that I'm doing right now, is that like I felt was very fostered in Quinnipiac, because like I got to test my skills out and like see where I wanted to fall. I could have very well said like, hey, I want to do acting full time, and then hopefully maybe got something, but like it kind of like fell into like show running and like acting as like a kind of like sub thing. So it's definitely like it's super cool to have that, and so I gave those like personable tours, and I think one of the juniors that came to one of my tours must have like actually went to the end and got admitted, because like I had left an impact on him, and I was just like, that's really cool. It's terrifying because I had no idea who they were, but that happens to me sometimes. Like I'll walk up to people like in RA, like especially in RA. This happened with one of the RHDs, because originally how we did duty check-in is like we all checked in at Res Life behind the Bobcat Den, which is our like late night dining on campus. But we check into Res Life, we get our walkies, get our MasterCards and all stuff like that. And one of the RHDs comes in and she's like, oh, you're Ben Darling. I was like, hi. And she's just like, oh, I've heard so much about you. And I'm just like, from who? And she's just like, returners. And I'm just like, okay, well, hopefully it's all good. And like most of the time it is. Like I honestly, like I love being in Res Life, because like it's given me so many friends, and like it feels like again, like I was talking about with the moving thing, it's just like I felt like I was a part of something. And I had one RA come to me over the summer. She graduated and decided to come back and visit Res Life. Her name is Alyssa. She came up to me while I was working in Res Life, and she's like, Ben, you have enough personality for 3 people. And I'm just like, that's like the greatest compliment I've ever received. And it just like, and honestly, like it's stuck with me for the rest. It's probably going to stick with me for the rest of my life, and just kind of remind me of like what I'm really good at and who I am. Yeah.
How does this affect Ben Darling's legacy?
How does this, like the Zicast?
No, I mean, like the LeBron joke.
Oh, I did not clock that at all. That's good.
But yes, but I would say that you've had a very positive legacy. A lot of people seeing the way you interact with everyone in Quinnipiac tonight, and the big personality you do have, which I'm glad that your friend Alyssa highlighted, is that you do have this big personality that's helped you so well. So Quinnipiac Tonight is with Q30, so like a TV show. But I want to get into the TV shows you like. So how about you tell us any hot takes you have about media?
Season 4. I'm gonna look at the camera while I say this. Cut to me. Season 4 of The Flash, character interaction wise, was the best season. And like, I'm not talking about the story. I'm gonna go back to you now. I'm not talking necessarily about the story, because most of the story was just Grant Gustin. I love Grant Gustin. He's actually like he's my biggest idol in terms of like men's mental health, and also acting. He's the whole reason why I like try to copy his hairstyle sometimes. But I love that season for the way the characters interact with each other. It's one of my favorite jokes was like when Caitlin, she becomes like Killer Frost in the 4th season. Caitlin is one of the scientists that Barry Allen, the Flash, works with, and she becomes like this killer frost monster every single time. Like she is scared or angry or something like that. It's kind of like a Hulk situation. And there was this one moment with like Harrison Wells, who's also one of these scientists, and Cisco Ramon, who was like more of like the tech guy. He made all the toys and stuff like that. they were like arguing with her and like were it was a great scene, and I cannot do it justice by explaining it. Definitely go watch it, but I think like in terms of like the humor factor, season 4 was the best because it was just so funny. Now the season as a whole was mainly just Barry doing like a push-up, being like DeVoe, something like that, and just screaming at him the entire time, and then like the whole ending was just like, oh, we defeated him with the power of love sort of thing. I'm just like, all right, that's like crazy. But like character interaction wise, which I think is like one of the most important things with the story, I think it was one of the best seasons. So anyone who says that season 4 is bad, I disagree. But yeah, no, I'm super into The Flash. I'm trying to think of any other hot takes I have, because I had one more about Star Wars that I wanted to say. I lost it. I tried to.
You do have your 6 Star Wars tattoo.
I do, yeah.
To us.
I did. Can we? Everyone see it? Oh wow, that's actually low-key really good on the camera.
Yeah. Which is, I assume that's a clone reference.
Yeah, it is. Number. Yeah. And this is like, can kind of get into like the whole reason why I love storytelling and to begin with is because like I grew up with the Clone Wars. There was a lot of times like when I was a kid that like I like would learn a lot of like my morals, my stuff like that based off of Clone Wars. Every single episode starts with like the Jedi fortune cookie.
I was about to say,
I love the fortune cookies. They're so cool. There's actually like a whole stretch, and I still do this every once in a while, is like I'll post one of them on my close friends story, and like people will just be like, Ben, what kind of philosophical crap you running on? I'm just like, it's Clone Wars, man. It's definitely like 100% just like a quote that Dave Filoni just thought of one day. Dave Filoni is the showrunner on the show. But anyways, Clone Wars was my favorite show, and a lot of people like love it because it turned the prequels like good in a way where like the prequels in the beginning were like it's this incoherent mess, like, oh, the good guys are like terrible but the bad guys like never show any or do anything, and I'm just like, well, there's like a whole different story beneath that you're missing. And George Lucas himself, he said at one point, he's just like, all the important beats are in the movies, but you have to watch Clone Wars to get the entire picture. So a lot of people like it for that. Me personally, I am so attached to the clones and the clone troopers. The best way I can put it is George Lucas and Dave Filoni were being interviewed, and like the interviewer was just like, you took numbers, faceless, CGI'd cannon fodder, and you gave them a real sense of individualism and personality. And George Lucas was talking about like, well, clones are people, like everyone starts off the same, but as time we grow up and we change and we find out who we are and we figure out our identities. One of the things Dave Filoni said is just like, George always reiterated, make these stories hopeful, to give that to kids because they really need it. And that was just like, as a kid, I like watching that in hindsight. This makes me tear up every single time I think about it. But as a kid, I was that kid that needed to be given that little bit of hope. So I always like, I was so attached to the clones from the minute I saw them on the Clone Wars movie. Terrible movie, but I have nostalgia for it, so I'm fully willing to say, hey, I like that movie, but purely out of nostalgia. But then like the Rookies episode, the Umbara arc, all those are like fantastic stories that really like delve in. And that's like the Umbara arc is where the saying not just another number comes from. And it's actually the Clone Trooper 5s, who's outside of Rex probably one of the most unique clones in the whole army. And he finds out, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the Clone Wars, but he uncovers Palpatine's grand plan of Order 66 to kill all the Jedi, and they have the chips in their heads to make them do it. And so he uncovers this, and he tries to like be the stone that breaks the flow or something like that, and he can't, because like the totalitarian government that is the empire already exists in all but name. So he gets taken down by that, and it always stuck with me, not just another number, because like as a person, I struggled with kind of being like, I'm not just another person, I'm not just another, like, I matter, everyone matters, and I'm not just another number, none of us are. And so I got that on my arm. It took a long while to, like, I wanted my first one, a couple tattoos I really just want as like a joke, but I wanted my first one to be like personable to me. Like I wanted it on my arm because I know Grant Gustin, he has on his forearm down here, he has Superman. I really love him on there because Superman was his obsession when he was a kid. And so I was just like, all right, I want it on my forearm like this. And I went through so many different quotes from the show. Like I was something about like fighting in a war tests a soldier's resilience. Defending one's home tests a soldier's courage. And I was like, oh, I like that. But then like, not just another number really stuck out to me, because like that's like if anyone like were to like stop me in the street and be like, hey, what's like a quick sentence of like every single moral belief that you have, and it's not just another number, that everyone matters, even the people that have done me wrong. Like I still like am wishing them the best, because like, again, they're people too. Like, hey, yeah, they may have hurt me, but like in some sort of way, forgiveness is just kind of like letting that happen, but like understanding that you still deserve respect. But yeah, no, and I oh my god, I didn't know where I was gonna get it. I was like searching forever, and I was like, oh man, this is so expensive. And then my sister, who has a million tattoos, was just like, hey, I know a place, like this guy, his name's Steve, he's like the greatest. And I'm just like, all right, word, can I, like, it's Propaganda Inc. in Southington, and it's just right across the street from the Stop and Shop there, literally 5 seconds from my house. So I called him up, and I was just like, hey, I was looking to like get a tattoo, something like that. Like, could be like, can I sit down? I want to talk with Steve about it. And they're just like, yeah, sure. Let's go ahead. Like, we'll give us your phone number, and we'll have him call you. And so I got a call, and I was talking with him about it, and I was just like, all right, well, here's what I'm looking for. And he's like, all right, well, send it to me in a picture form over text, and then we'll print it out, and we will put it on your arm. And so we did that, and my dad was with me. I really wanted someone who was with me, and like my dad was like one of the first thoughts. I wanted one of my buddies with me, because like who like helped me kind of form like the whole sort of like, I really need like my identity sort of thing figured out. So I was originally like I wanted you to come with me, and he's just like, oh yeah, I'm working, by the way. And I'm just like, well, I can't do that. So then my second was like, let's get my dad out here, because like, again, like when my mom passed away, he was like really big on like he was my idol, because he was a single dad raising two kids. And like a lot of people, like single moms go through a lot. I'm not diminishing that at all, but I'm saying that single dads also go through a lot. And my dad did the best with my sister and I. And so he was with me, and we were talking about Star Wars with the tattoo artist the entire time. Steve was like a great guy. We were yapping it up the whole time. And then we get at the end, he shows it off to me, and he's just like, if you were a trooper, or like if a trooper wanted to get a tattoo, I think they get something like this. And I was just like, that is the coolest thing I've ever been told. And then the second coolest thing happened to me like 2 days later. I got the bandage off, and I was in Stop and Shop in Hamden, and a little kid looked at me, saluted, and said, "For the Republic." And I was just like, that is the coolest thing ever, because like now, as like I'm 22 years old and I'm getting into the storytelling industry, I'm just like, now I get to be that person to that kid, to another person who was like me, who needed that little hope and pick me up from the Clone Wars. Like, I get to do that, and I'm like, that is the most powerful thing I could ever do. Like, that's the legacy I want to leave. So yeah,
we learned about how that affects you. So let's learn more about you, and how about you tell us some things people might not know about you?
So I talked a lot about like the writing thing, but I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily realize I write, because like a lot of it has been like producer and stuff like that, and some of the stuff that I've written has just been like kind of like written. Like I don't feel like I advertise it a lot, but over break is when I like winter break this past year. I feel like I started advertising it a little bit more. I wrote a 60-page pilot drama about crime in LA, and I'm super proud of it. And I also something that like I feel like people know about me, but not necessarily know like how I got to a certain point, is like me listening to rap and hip hop. Is that like I started off like knowing what hip hop was, enjoying it, but never really like getting into the nitty gritty of like what it actually meant. And I definitely like learned more as I got older, like the storytelling aspects in hip hop and stuff like that. I also play ultimate frisbee. So I feel like there's a couple things that I don't tell a lot of people, because like again, there's I try to do a lot and keep myself busy, but then like I feel like I need a bigger head sometimes, because there's like all these stories I could go on for hours and 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 hours about my experiences with people. But realistically, at the end of the day, I like sometimes just try to tell the important bits. And it's like sometimes with like the writing, I'm just like, I really want to do that. But like sometimes with people I'm just having conversation with, I'm just like, oh, I'm just in film, because like I'm coming from Southington, where a lot of people like my dad's an engineer, my grandfather was an engineer, and my great grandfather was a woodworker. So like they sort of like, when I wanted to get into film, I was terrified to tell my parents. I was just like, holy crap, how do I tell them I don't want to do a trade or something like that? Like, how do I tell them I don't want to do like computer science or something like that's like going to be like more stable? Because like in this industry, like there's a very heavy chance with some people that like you can't make it, because you need to have a certain level of discipline, but also like have like the connections in order to get out there and get your face out there. So I was like terrified. I sat them down one day. I was just like, hey, I talked with the college advisor, like we're going to do like film, if that's okay. And my dad was like super impressed, and he was just like, yeah, I think like you'd be perfect for that. And then talking about it over with my grandfather was a little less good, because like I think even to this day he keeps asking me like, oh well, you're gonna have to start looking for a job soon. I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing I'm doing it right now. Like I'm doing all my art for him and stuff like that. I don't think he quite understands, because he comes from a different generation where like they were always just like, hey, you work this job, you work it until like you're 70 and then you die, essentially. So which is a morbid way to put it, but like it's kind of unfortunately reality of his generation. And so when I try to explain it to other people, I'm just like, oh, I'm just like in film. So like when I talk to other people who are just like, oh, you like produce and stuff like that, oh, you do all this, like even in Quinnipiac Tonight, a lot of the times I would write the tosses, and sometimes I would also write the cold opens if like Grace was getting swamped with other stuff. Like I'd be like, hey, I can come help out. So 1000% I write, and I feel like not a lot of people like necessarily know that. I've done that pilot. I've done several shorts, films, and like every single piece of media that I've produced so far in the past, like I want to say year and a half, has all been my original like writing and like stuff that I can take and go further. Like I did in our directing class with Ashley Brandon, teaching us how to like direct and stuff like that. We had to take like a synesthesia project, which was kind of like you take a scene from a movie or something like that, direct it in like your own sort of way, like understand the script and stuff like that. So what I ended up doing is writing an entire basically kind of feature length sort of thing, and then plucking one single scene from that. So like I do have plans eventually to like make it a whole thing, which is kind of like my final like fist in the air to my ex that did very bad things. But I wrote it like with my own like experience at heart. And that's something like Ash was she applauded me for doing that, because she was like, that's like what art is like, it's taking your human experience and it's kind of like understanding and conveying that to the audience, which is why sometimes like I hate it when people are just like, oh, AI is the future. AI can go away. AI is not the future of art. It can do things like that are very good. Like if I needed to organize something or I needed to do like a simple task, that's fine. That's fine for AI. But AI is never, ever, ever going to be able to replicate the human experience. And I just think that, and I disagree with some big companies that are just like, oh, AI can like write scripts and stuff like that. Like when I heard the compromise originally, I was just like, okay, this is like a good like political move for the Writers Guild, but like I was kind of like thinking about it, seeing like, oh, like AI can like write the baseline of scripts, and I'm just like, no, that shouldn't be part, like AI should not be part of the process. But like again, that's my personal opinion. I think the deal that they got was like definitely better than like what was currently happening. So I definitely think we got what we were looking for. But I love writing. I love character interaction, and something that I always do when I write is like I always focus on my characters, because like people can build plot any day. Like they can have the craziest thing come out of nowhere. I learned that as a child. Like I had plot for days, like with the little like Lego figures that I had out there. Did the plot make sense? Absolutely not. Did the characters make sense? Absolutely not. But mainly because I was just a child and I was like playing with them. But I think something that I learned as I got older is that like your characters drive your story. And if you don't have good characters, then you don't have a good story. So you need to like understand your characters' motivations, their wants, their goals, which is all synonyms for motivations. But you also need to like understand what they fear, understand what they love, and understand like what makes them tick. And once you figure that out, don't worry about the plot, because the plot will figure itself out. Like when I get to a writer's block moment, when I'm like writing, and a lot of times unfortunately this creative juice of mine starts flowing at like 1 a.m. So like I'm just like up at 2 a.m. just tapping away on my computer, and I've been told by several people that I'm very aggressive when I type, which is totally a trait I stole from my stepmom. But when you're writing, if you have writer's block, I always go back to my characters and like be like, okay, this is what currently is happening. What do I want to go in a certain direction? And how will I get there with character motivation? Because how they react is how they'll shape your story. Because if you think about in real life, we're all like your slogan is we're all stories, and I firmly believe that. And we're molded and we're going forward based off of the decisions we make and other people make. So when you're writing, it's the same premise almost, where like you're seeing the people around your main character interacting with each other. So that's how you get forward in a plot, and that's how you create something that's worth telling. Yeah, I actually like when I heard the slogan, "We're all a story," we all have stories or something like that. I was just like, yeah, and that's why I love history. Sometimes that's another thing I feel like people don't know about me, is that like I am a huge history nerd. I love like one of my favorite. There's two of my favorite things that I love watching on YouTube, and one of them is Oversimplified History, which goes through like all these other things, and he basically just like he makes history but like dumbs it down, but he tells it like a story, and I love that. Another one is Extra Credits or Extra History. Not so much following them recently, but like they way back when, I think it was like, I want to say like 6 years ago or something like that, they released a 3-part miniseries on the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I don't think I was more enthralled in a historical drama than ever before, which actually got me into looking into the JFK era, and then also the movie 13 Days. Great movie, great story. If people like sit down to like think about like how that crisis unfolded, like from an outside perspective, you realize how close we were to nuclear destruction that day. I know that's morbid, but like that's stakes. Those are stakes. And like I don't like that's storytelling, and I love history so much. I could go on for hours and hours and hours.
Interesting. Give us,
yes,
the audience, some your hopes and dreams.
My hopes and dreams. So my absolute 1000% dream, work for Lucasfilm. Either produce, write, or showrun. kind of falling like maybe in Dave Filoni's footsteps. And I actually, like, one of the writers contacts that I met actually knew Jennifer Corbett, who wrote Star Wars: The Bad Batch. And I like, he called her on the phone. She didn't pick up because she was at a Lucasfilm conference, but like, I'm in Jennifer Corbett's voicemail box, or I was. If she might have deleted it, but like, I was there at one point, and I was just like, holy cow. Like, and like, I was like, that's insane to me. But yeah, that's what I really want to do. I want to travel 100%. I want to eventually, like, I originally had plans over spring break before, like, you know, whole financial situation happened. I wanted to go to Norway and just kind of like take a road trip there, because I think that's like a beautiful country to go there. And also, like, I'm Scandinavian, and I'm just like through my DNA test, and I learned that. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I want to be Norwegian, because the Norse are just so cool. And so, yeah, I want to do that. Eventually, the want is to, like, build up enough of a name that, like, I can kind of pull a George Lucas and, like, kind of, like, you know, go off, like, where I don't have to, like, live in the city, but, like, find, like, a nice secluded sort of house and, like, you know, have like a family or something like that. At least a dog, very least a dog. I could like without a family would be, like, okay, but, like, I need a dog, like, dog 1000%. But yeah, no, that's kind of like the direction. I wanna act more. Yeah. I do, because I like acting and like being in things. Because like, I feel like in that moment, becoming someone else is like something I've always had a very overactive imagination. And I think that's why my dad was just like, yeah, film works for you, because like my brain is always, it's sometimes, it's borderline annoying sometimes, because like, I'll be trying to sleep at night and my brain will just be going. It's like the toughest thing sometimes to get my brain to quiet down. But like, I literally, becoming someone else is such a cool concept to me. And essentially, like, the way that I think about it is when I'm like in my writers and when I'm in my acting process, I've learned tips and tricks to help me with memorization, learn with like how to act, how to portray the character. But baseline, how I go into it is that, like, I'm just playing. I'm playing. It's a thing when I did when we were all kids. It's just like, we took on a persona of someone else, and we were just like, haha, I'm so and so, give me your money, or something like that. Yeah, no, it's I kind of go into it like that sort of baseline, and then I use the training that I got through being I'm also a theater minor. I don't know if I stated that at all, but yeah, theater minor. So,
what are some of your favorite movies?
My favorite movie of all time, Ford versus Ferrari. I love cars. And again, I don't like, okay, people know that about me. I have a Cobra hoodie. Yeah, no, I love cars. I think they're so cool. Speed. If I could have one superpower, having speed without physics would be so cool. Physics is the biggest buzzkill on the planet, because like, literally it's just like, why can't I run at superhuman speeds? Well, because physics said so. Well, physics is stupid. I actually love physics, so I don't know why I said that, but anyways, I digress. I love the speed. I love cars. I love working on cars. Well, when I can. I'm by definition a gearhead, but like, there are some people in that community that could, like, you could hand them like a wrench and an engine and say, build a car, and they say, bet. Meanwhile, I'd be sitting there like Patrick with like the plywood like attached to his forehead. I could not figure it out. But I do like working with cars and like understanding how they tick and stuff like that. And I kind of had that not ingrained in me as a child, but like more sort of like, I watched things like the United Kingdom Top Gear, which they went on long road trips. That's also a dream of mine, is like, I'd like to get two of my best friends, go on a road trip, film it, and like just have fun, because I think that would be like so cool. But anyways, I love Ford versus Ferrari, because it's like, it's a very big, like, I think it's very anti-corporate in its mindset. It's more like, it's all like, hey, the way they're trying to win this race is wrong. The main like villain is technically Ferrari because it's Ford versus Ferrari, but you have a side villain too, which is the executives within Ford trying to win a race, which is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It's an endurance race that's held in France. It's been going on since like, I want to say late 40s, early 50s. It's been going on for quite some time now. And Ford never really was in it because it was a European race. So one day, one of the what's the word, the ad guys, all the advertisement people were just like, people don't want to drive cars that their grandfathers drove. They want to drive a car that's fast, but also a badge that means victory. So they're like, what if we went to Le Mans? And then so that's when they approached Carroll Shelby, who's like one of the main protagonists in the movie, and who's played by Matt Damon very excellently, I might add. And then Ken Miles, who's his driver, which is played by Christian Bale, again very spectacularly. So they go through the whole like making the Ford GT, which is my favorite car. If I could buy it, like I would do anything to buy it. I would love that car, but red. It has to be red. Maybe some black in it, but it has to be red. So they start making the Ford GT. There's a lot of hurdles they gotta overcome. That's like technical wise, and they find that out. Like that comes fairly naturally. They're all mechanics. Ken Miles, a mechanic. He knows cars better than anyone. But I would say that their biggest flaws come with Ford was when they tried to win a race, like I said, by committee. Leo Beebe, who I cannot recall the actor's name off the top of my head, but he does a phenomenal job of portraying this, like, he's trying to impress his boss. He's trying to get ahead in the company. And that's like a perfect, like, you look at America nowadays, and that's like all that happens is like some executive, some business person, some worker in business, some other like suit type person is trying to impress someone higher than them, and they want to get a leg up on anyone that's their competition, and they hate themselves for it, but they love themselves for it because they want to get that leg up, and they portray Ford like that perfectly. And so Leo Beebe is constantly sticking his nose into the business. He doesn't even know what he's talking about when it comes to racing. He's like in they show like one of the smaller races that happens is the 24 Hours of Daytona, and he set the limit to like 6,000 RPM on the thing when the Ford GT could clear 7,000. They didn't know that at the time, but the thing that set Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby apart from Ford was that they were willing to take that risk because it was racing. They understood at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to gun it. And like as the sign said, like Carroll Shelby, there's a great moment in the movie where Carroll Shelby walks out from the infield. You're not supposed to do that because like debris and stuff can fly in there at high speed and could low key kill you. But he walks in from the infield, like walks right up next to the track, holds up a sign and says 7,000 RPM plus, go like hell. And I love that scene so much because Ken Miles just opens up the Ford GT, and like you get to see what that car can do. The direction of that movie is directed by James Mangold. The direction of that movie was absolutely fantastic. You get to feel like you're in the car. And it's just so cool. And then we get to the main event with the Ford versus Ferrari, and they solve that conflict. Ferrari's car can't keep up with the Ford. Its engine dies, and Ken Miles like becomes like one, not the first American to win the Le Mans race, but the first American car company to win the 24 Hours Le Mans. And he is like all ecstatic and stuff like that. And then the CEO of Ford lands in Le Mans and is like, let's get a picture of all three Fords across the finish line, because at that point of the race, all the Fords are running 1, 2, 3, and Ken Miles is like, they're robbing me because I done all the work. I've built this car the way it is, and now they want to rob me of this victory. I've wanted to do racing my entire life. And so he puts on like what he calls the perfect lap. My dad and I talk about it. Like there's always there's no such thing as a perfect lap. You can always do something better. You can always improve upon it. But so that scene, he puts on the perfect lap. Every single corner, every single gear change is quote unquote perfect. And he sets a new lap record, which he also passed himself. So he's going faster than ever before. And then there's a moment in the movie where he's just like, this is bigger than me. I know that this is still letting them win, the people with the suits, but I'm going to bring in the other fours because that's what we should be about. Like, I need to get over this pettiness. Let's just get the photograph done. And the original plan was that all three fours were going to end in a tie. When they got to the results, it turned out that Ken Miles actually had lost the race because technically, since they were it was a whole, they came up with some race crap to be oh yeah, by the way, he started out further, I think it was McLaren at that point who was driving the other Ford, who he said, oh yeah, he started back further from you, so technically he won. And everyone's just yo, no, what the hell? And so I'll finish talking about the movie because again, I could talk about hours about that movie because I love it so much. But the one scene that I love is Ken interacting with his son, and they I haven't mentioned the son, but I feel like he's an integral part of the movie because he's kind of the audience in the movie, where he's learning all of this for the first time. He loves racing. He's not quite sure. At least that's how I interpreted it because I was into racing so much. But when the movie first came out, it came out in 2019. It was right before COVID, I think. And so I watched it with my dad and my brother before everything shut down. And I was at that point, I was into racing, but I wasn't so ingrained in racing that I knew everything about it and knew everything about cars. And so I kind of viewed myself as Ken Miles' son. And he sat down with his son at one point. They have a great moment where they sit down and be out there is the perfect laugh, every gear change, every corner. But you also have to understand that you have a machine that you're driving, and in order to push a machine to its limits, you have to have some sense of where that limit is. And sometimes people who overwork and overexert themselves, you can kind of see that they don't necessarily know where their limitations might be, where they take a step back. So every time I'm kind of overworking myself, or I see anyone in my life overworking themselves, I just kind of remind myself of that clip being you have to have some sense of where that limitation is. The sky is the limit, no doubt. Always push yourself, always push forward. But if you're in a way where you are not taking care of yourself, you need to understand that you're a machine as well, and you need to step back and refuel. Yeah,
that was the perfect synopsis.
I tried. I love that movie. I've watched it so many times. I think I have I have a soundtrack on the car on my Spotify. That's all from that movie, which I can't remember what the composer's name was. I do know composer's name. I'm a nerd. Kevin Kiner in Star Wars. There's sometimes I'm playing Rocket League with Armand, and I'll be Destroying the Shield by Kevin Kiner. What do you know about it? And he's I have no idea. So I do know composers' names. I don't remember who composed Ford vs. Ferrari off the top of my head. But I do know that he did a phenomenal job, and I have it in my Spotify playlist, and there's a reservoir in Southington that's right on the border with I think it's New Britain. And there's this nice road around it, and golden hour at that time on that road is truly mythical. So sometimes whenever need to clear my head, I'll just go on that road, and it's it's so fun. I'll throw that soundtrack on, and sometimes I will break the speed limit. But it's a lot of fun to listen to that and kind of think that hey, I'm Ken Miles, and it's cool.
Yeah, we're breaking the speed limit, and you really broke through on this episode of the Zicast.
I kind of like just went off, so I appreciate you giving me the time and the platform to speak, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on, and
of course.
It's always great hanging around with you. You always have a great personality and energy, and you have so much passion for all the things you do.
I try.
And it's great that you brought that out on here to show the whole world, but also in everything you do. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. I always love hanging out with you, Ryan Zicast, because like
Thank
I
you,
always
Ben
feel like I'll say something funny and like some other people will go over their heads, and then I just look at you and then you're just smiling because you heard it. And I'm just like, oh, Ryan. And then you're so dedicated. And again, when I was talking about people like with discipline on that, 71 episodes, there's no way I could do a 71 episode podcast. I think that's truly something that you should be proud of. And I'm super excited to see where you go.
Thank you, Ben. You'd be surprised. Of course. And as always, this is Ryan Zicast with the Zicast, where everyone has a story. Signing off. Thank you so much for watching.